When Anele's father, Moses, asked me to read his personal tribute, I duly agreed. In my deepest desire that my girl live to be who she wanted to be, I nurtured these Anele traits of sheer single-mindedness, independence, and assertiveness. For I truly believed she needed guidance rather than repression. And one strongly differed with her, persuasion rather than brute force. Anele and I had differing views on priorities. Hence we had father-daughter debates about her life. But it was her life. And she was clear, Dad, I want to get married as I develop. It was no wonder, therefore, that before she turned 22, she fell in love with Kenan, and lobola negotiations were held between the Dembes and the Forbes just a few weeks ago. I have always been happy with my daughter, and even when she introduced us to Kenan, I was very happy for her. I approved of their choices, and I made a very explicit suggestion as a condition to my approval that Anele and Kenan needed to subject themselves to proper premarital counseling. I knew Kenan loved my daughter, but I knew that their enduring companionship needed more than just love. It had to be premised and embedded on a godly foundation. I know that they were due for such premarital counseling on the past weekend of misfortune. I was determined to assist both of them in conquering their challenges, some of which I knew. Anele's dream has been shattered, and so is mine. That said, I count myself as entirely privileged and blessed, having fathered a girl child like Anele. Thank you, Lord. How is Anele no more? That's a question. In answering the vexing question, I must hasten to state the obvious, that I wasn't there when Anele met her fate last Sunday. I neither seek to attack any person, nor cast aspersions, nor create suspicions, nor stigmatize any mental condition. However, I cannot allow an unfortunate narrative go unchallenged. A narrative that irks me to no end as a father, which is maliciously purveyed in some circles, that Anele, my daughter, was a chronically suicidal or had suicidal tendencies. All I can say is that until she turned 21, Anele wouldn't consider taking her own life as a solution. As Anele's father, I hereby state categorically that Anele was neither suicidal nor did she commit suicide. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to understand the forces that put us in a situation that we find ourselves. Of course, we must, as a matter of extreme priority, deal with the scourge that bedevils our youth. Alcohol, which is overused, and drugs. We have a serious problem with substance abuse, and add to that other social ills then we are in a crisis. In closing, Kenan, I think I know what you are going through. I know the pain that you are feeling. In the face of extreme emotional pain, bigger women and men resort to all sorts of remedies, or what they consider to be remedies. My son, I invite you to turn to the Lord, and in so doing, you'll be assured of becoming a much better man.
Because they weren't asking me, but I felt it was like I had to tell them what had happened. So I told them what had happened, as I told you now, and then they kind of nodded, they kind of took it in, and we spoke a bit about arrangements to get her body back to Durban, and then they left.
Was there any blame, especially after you told them that she died after an argument?
No, there was no blame. They didn't blame me in that moment. They didn't say anything. If anything, they were quite compassionate and quite mournful with me. They could see I was in a state. I could see they were in a state. So there was none of that.
In that tribute, he then says that she was not suicidal. He did not know her to be suicidal. Without saying that she had been on drugs, then makes a point about young people and drug abuse. Mm-hmm. Why do you think he made that comment?
Well, I can't speculate as to why he would say those things. I can't speculate as to why that was his statement. But what I do know is that I think culturally, for what I can think of, I think culturally, mental health and depression, especially suicide, culturally, in terms of the family as well, it's taboo. It's a no-go area. It's something that won't happen to our child. It's something that couldn't have happened. But I also know at the same time that he was well aware that Anele was on medication. We spoke about it many times. We had spoken about her sometimes getting off her medication, not being on her medication. We had spoken after she had spent a week in Asiko, psychiatric hospital in Umhlanga. Mm-hmm. So he was well aware that she had stayed there for a week. He was aware, because me and him spoke at length about her suicide attempt in Durban. He was the one who picked her up from hospital. So we had spoken many times. And it wasn't just us. My mother had sat down with me after the Hilton Durban incident, and had sat me down and said, "Son, are you aware? Are you aware of what this is going to take, and are you prepared to go the distance with somebody who, with a condition like this? Do you understand it? Are you educated enough on the subject?" And I said, "Yes, Mom, I will do anything for her, because I love her, and the way you raised me and the way I was taught is not to abandon somebody when you love them. How could I do that?" So I stuck it out, and as it pertains to her dad and what he said at the funeral, he knows these things. We've spoken about them. So to say that he didn't think she was suicidal, I don't know why he said that, but what I do know is that he was well aware of those things that I've just listed.
And on the issue of the drugs, why did he make that point? You say you are not currently abusing any substances. Yeah. You were not on any drugs during your relationship.
Yeah.
Was she on substances?
Like I said at the start of the interview, I'm not going to point fingers at Anele and say she was this or she was that, she was or she wasn't. For me, I'm here to speak, to protect her memory, to protect her legacy. That's what I'm here for. So you would have to ask him why he would say something like that.
Why go the route of a statement versus, for example, giving a quote to a newspaper Were you responding to the inquiry firstly from the newspapers? Were you trying to preempt the reporting?
Yeah, I had gotten a call on the Saturday morning about the story that was going out on the Sunday. So I had gotten in touch with a member of my team, and I told him, look, this is what they're saying, so what do we do? Upon, a lot of our own kind of piecing of things together, we believe that it is someone, I don't know who, but they've unlocked Anele's phone, right? And the papers had been sitting on the story for weeks. Actually weeks, it wasn't also when you go to print for a story like that, as I understand, you print on the day, on the Saturday, and then you go to paper. So to ask me in the morning, for me it felt very orchestrated, and a lot of what's going on in the media and also in the inquest feels orchestrated, and it feels like there's ulterior and kind of
orchestrated by whom and
ulterior
what
different forces at play. Because for me, I thought, let me put this statement out to preempt and to address what's coming out in the papers tomorrow. I also felt that a quote wouldn't do it justice. I wanted to state my claim and say what I had to say. You asking me?
My question was, who, A, would lead to the publication of these stories with an agenda, and B, what would they have to gain?
People who want to blame me, people who want to make me the person responsible. That would be the motive. And the gains, there are no gains in a situation like this. Anele is gone. We can never bring her back. So I wouldn't say it's gains, but I know there's a lot of trauma on all sides. I know people are grieving, they're mourning, and I can't understand their process. But what I do know is the people who are providing the papers with these, videos and these clips, the timing of it is something that I'm paying attention to, because when Anele was here and things were great and we were in love, but now it's she's gone. It's all in the papers. It's in the media. My character is being brought into question. So I just question the timing of it, and also the timing, of the videos, and I question the sources as well.
So, but do you at the very least understand why there'd be some anger directed at you, be it from your friends and family, given precisely the fact that, yes, these are snippets into your relationship, but these are things that did happen. So when people are trying to make sense, especially of someone who, as we're saying, took their own life, they will try to look at the factors that may have contributed to that. And some would say, in fact, you were a part of that, maybe not entirely, but you may have been part of pushing her over the edge.
Myself and Anele's lives were intertwined. We were going to build a life together, like I said before. And it's impossible for whatever she was going through at any given time while she was with me not to have anything to do with me. I was her life, she was my life. However, it's important to look at things in the whole context. Anele had attempted suicide before. Anele had spoken about it many times before. And people know this. So when those things had happened, there was no blame on me then. There was no outcry against me then. But Anele made that decision. She took her own life, and I'm here to grieve. We all grieving, and however they want to express their anger is not up to me to dictate. I can just interpret it the way that I'm interpreting it.
At this stage, do you personally take on any kind of blame, any kind of accountability for where she was mentally at the time of her death?
I think it's impossible not to feel part and parcel of her mental and emotional state, especially if you're trying to build a life with her and become a husband and you're headed that way. But I think it's very important to also realize that Anele had a life before me. Anele was Anele before she met me. Also within our life, Anele had her own life, her own friends, and she was her own person. She was strong-willed, and you couldn't force her to do anything that she didn't want to do. So for instance, even when you talk about drugs and you talk about abuse and so forth, you couldn't force Anele to do anything that she did not want to do. Anele made her own choices. That was the type of woman that she was, and that's why I loved her so much. But it was also the sense, at the source of a lot of difficulties that we had. So to say that I'm responsible, I wouldn't use the word responsible, but I would definitely say that wherever she was at that point in her life, my life and hers were intertwined, yes.
I think it's worth saying, though, that you make the point about how she was strong-willed, she was stubborn, she made her own decisions, but the nature of abuse, even over and above your situation, is that even the strongest women can be abused despite being strong. So I think that's worth saying. I think it's worth saying, though, that you make the point about how she was strong-willed, she was stubborn, she made her own decisions, but the nature of abuse, even over and above your situation, is that even the strongest women can be abused despite being strong. So I think that's worth saying. But another thing that you said is that you think someone has now managed to get into her phone, and that's how the videos are now circulating.
Yeah.
But what we read was that she sent these videos to her friends because that's how terribly afraid she was of you. So how can you say for sure that she did not share the videos of her own accord with her friends?
Well, as I had read the article, it said it was an activist who does not, a GBV activist who does not want to be named. Is that how they put it? My opinion is that it is not a friend who has decided to step forward all of a sudden.
What is that information that has shaped your opinion?
I can't disclose that information.
Do you believe it is her family that's behind what's going on?
I can't point any fingers at her family.
When last did you speak to the Dembe family?
The last time I've spoken to the Dembe family in particular, her father, was the day after the funeral. Yes, so I went back to their house and I sat down with him and I looked him in the eye and I attempted to give him the closure of what had happened.
What was that closure? Was it you recounting the events of the day his daughter died?
Well, for me, if I was a father, which I am a father, if something like that had happened, I would want the person who was with her to come to me and explain to me exactly what had happened. So I felt like I shouldn't just, it's the end, it's the funeral, and off I go into the sunset. I need to go to him. He gave me his daughter's hand in marriage, so therefore I need to go sit with him and explain to him and recount to him the events that led up to this tragedy.
And what did he say to your explanation? How did he receive it?
He received it like a grieving father. He received it like a mournful father. He was upset. He was upset. He was upset. He was sad. He was heartbroken, and so was I.
In your statement that you've issued, you refer to innuendo both in and around the funeral, but also at the service itself. What were the comments that you found troubling during the service?
For me, it was at the time I didn't understand it. I think I have more clarity on why. I can only, like I said to you, I can only guess why. I have my own opinions why. But the innuendos were the ones of that she did not commit suicide. Also, the police minister being there, speaking, I didn't understand that. I didn't understand. I can understand, maybe he's a friend of the family, but the way it was done, I felt like there was kind of an undercurrent of something didn't feel right to me. I think it's strange for me because I was her husband. I had paid lobola, right? So I thought that I would have an opportunity to also speak at a funeral to pay tribute to her. and I communicated that to the family through the person on my side who was handling things through to the family. And I got there and I sat down and I opened the book of the memorial, and my name wasn't there. So after I see that I'm not being permitted to speak, I kind of take it in, and then I listen to the dad's kind of testimony, and then about she not committing suicide, and then the police minister wasn't scheduled to speak, but then they said something about we have to observe him and please he has to come speak, and then up he comes to the podium and starts speaking, and I just felt like there was a lot of something didn't feel right to me.
Are you accusing the family and the minister of anything?
I said something didn't feel right to me. Something didn't feel right having his presence there, along with the father saying that this was not a suicide. The two together for me didn't equate. I said something didn't feel right to me. Something didn't feel right having his presence there, along with the father saying that this was not a suicide. The two together for me didn't equate. It's also in the fact that there are certain things which don't sit right with myself and my legal representatives. We asking the questions, for instance, like what type of inquest is it when obviously there's a trial by media, obviously there's going to be a trial by media, but also, for instance, Zinhle being interviewed, detectives flying up from Cape Town to interview Zinhle. Why? What is the direction of this inquest? Am I a suspect?
Are you suggesting that the police are out to get you?
I'm not suggesting that the police are out to get me. I'm requesting clarity on what is the status of this inquest. I mean, I think a week ago or 2 weeks ago, there was a quote from the minister. A reporter had asked him about this case, and he had kind of given a kind of a non-committed answer. So I also need to know. I also need to be updated with the status of autopsy, with the status of the inquest. Why are these people being interviewed? And what am I in the eyes of this inquest?